Hello and welcome to this month's edition of the Town Administrator Update, our chance to check in with Burlington Town Administrator Paul Sagarino to see sort of what's going on in town. Paul, thanks once again for joining me and taking some time.
It's always a pleasure to come, Rich. Thank you.
So I guess the big news we should start off with is we didn't have a long meeting on Monday that we were expecting because town meeting has been postponed. Can I talk about maybe some of the reasons why?
Yeah, the biggest reason why, in talking to our moderator, Bill Byer, and town clerk, Amy Warfield, we had intended on having a in-person meeting for the first time in a while. And that was prior to the Omicron surge that we recently experienced over the holidays. As a result of that, they began to rethink that in terms of public safety aspects of it. And when we went back to try to change it to a hybrid meeting, we found out that the legislation that allowed for hybrid town meetings had expired in December. So there's still legislation for the actual board meetings to be hybrid and whatnot, but actually town meeting falls under a separate section of law. So that was a bit of a surprise. So the decision was made to postpone it to February 16th at 7:30, I believe 7 or 7:30 at the. And in the meantime, Representative Gordon is working diligently at the state to try to get some legislation passed that would allow us to have a hybrid town meeting where town meeting members who wish to be in person could be there, and those that wish to participate remotely would also have that option as well.
Right, the way we've been doing it since the start of the pandemic.
Yes, correct.
Except for that one outdoor one.
Yeah,
my favorite one.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
And in your mind, what are some of like the big ticket items on up for this town meeting?
Yeah, there's some fairly routine financial ones that we do in January, but there's also a couple of interesting zoning articles, one of which would allow, it's called modernizing uses in some of the business districts, and that would be to allow for experiential type activities to go in where, particularly think of the mall where we have retail is just sort of on the downswing. What are some of the other types of things, golf simulators is an example.
Experiential things.
Experiential museums, in some cases, aquariums. There's quite a few concepts out there in use across the country, and it's just to give our retail spots some additional tools that they could use in order to fill spaces with really cool things and attract economic activity to the area. The second one is to allow for the continued outside dining. So we had set up a task force during the pandemic, and we created a system that we think is flexible and cost effective for businesses to try to bring the town outside activities, whether it's dining or placemaking and things of that nature.
Right.
And we've done it through the pandemic for the past couple of years, very, very successfully, I would think. It's a task force of all the departments that would normally chime in on a change like that. And police, fire, check in on the safety, planning board, board of health, economic development, everybody's at the table to try to make it a clean and efficient process for businesses to be able to operate outside.
Yeah, it seems like it's something that the restaurants would really like to have as an option. And,
it is.
And, diners as well.
Yeah, it's gone from both areas. I mean, people love the eating outside aspect now, too. It's just extremely popular. And, most of our restaurants have adapted with outside seating, and I think it's worked out really well.
Excellent. Another thing that sort of was, before the board recently was setting the budget guidelines for fiscal year 2023. Sounds like the future. Every year, every time, I guess. But and that they did approve what was presented, and that came from I guess what is called like the budget summit that happens every year.
Yep.
Talk a little about the process and what you're kind of looking at as far as the budget.
Because the town is so decentralized with many different elected boards and many departments reporting to elected boards. What the town initiated years ago was what's called the budget summit, where we try to get some of the key players in the room, and we try to reach a consensus on what we should shoot for parameters for the upcoming budget. You can imagine what it would be like if everybody was presenting a different budget to Ways and Means and town meeting. It would be very confusing. We'd be wondering whose budget we were talking about, this one or that one, and the numbers may not all fit at the end when you got through it. So it's really an attempt for everybody to get on the same page and say, hey, we can live with this, to provide simplicity and transparency to the residents, to the Ways and Means Committee, and ultimately to town meeting, for them to have one consolidated budget document where we've all agreed upon where we want the spending limits to be, where we want the tax levy to increase, and then we can work with within those parameters once they've been determined. So it's actually a pretty cool process. I think we talked about it at the meeting the other night. There's a lot of compromise involved. Some folks want to spend more, some folks want to spend less. So it's kind of like, as they say, making a sausage. But I think at the end of the day, we end up with some good parameters that we can all present to town meeting as a unified front to say we think that this is a good budget overall. Town, school, recreation, library, all the departments in concert together, and also know that we're still working within some big picture constraints to try to keep our eye on property taxes and things of that nature.
Right. I mean, because I think town accountant John Denizio did mention that hotels are still, like, the tax from the hotels are still down, but fortunately there's been some movement on meals tax and permits. Yeah,
the town's local economy has been remarkably resilient, but we're still dealing with some of these issues that were developing even before the pandemic. The change of office space and people working from home, the change in retail with less people going to the stores and ordering a lot of things on Amazon. And of course, I would say the biggest sector that was really impacted for town of Burlington through the pandemic was the hotels. They've really been decimated. They went from almost full occupancy, excellent occupancy, excellent rates, to the future of business travel. Who knows what that is at this point? So, but they started to come back a little bit, and then Omicron has reared its head, and a lot of the events and things of that nature that would generate hotel traffic have been canceled recently. But we're hopeful that they can bounce back soon.
Just a couple of last things. One, and hit on this one pretty quick, is just the board did vote to increase the fee to completely demolish a home. It was the suggestion, I think, was going to be $200. They decided to raise it up for $1,000 to be able to have some extra funds for a separate account. Just talk about what the goal of that is.
Yes, Select Board Member Runyon, who's also participates on the town's housing partnership, that was his initiative, and this town has done a great job of generating affordable housing opportunities within the community. We're at 13% of our housing stock is affordable, and we have a very dedicated group of volunteer citizens that sort of manage housing issues and housing direction. And given the size of this program, we wanted to be able to provide them with some resources that they could work with. So Select Board Member Runyon suggested that because houses are getting knocked down approximately 50 a year, technically they're older, affordable homes, and they're getting replaced by larger, more expensive homes. He thought that was a worthwhile permit or fee to look at to generate some additional revenue that we could then allocate into providing resources for the housing partnership. So I thought it was a great suggestion. The board passed it, and now the finance team and I have to sort of work about what's the best way to work that into the budget so that we can provide these resources as soon as possible.
Excellent. And last thing, it was a presentation at Monday night about the Green Communities program, and just sort of what the town has been able to accomplish in the first year and a half that it's been enrolled with that. You want to just kind of give us some of the highlights?
Sure. We entered the Green Communities program shortly after I became the town administrator. There was some things within the legislation that were not desirable when the town looked at it in previous years, but we felt as though that it was a worthwhile program for us to move forward with. Rachel Leonardo from Public Works is headed up that project, and on an annual basis we receive grant funding from the state, and what we're able to do with that is to invest into our buildings infrastructure, whether it be heating units, electrical, replacement with LEDs. Everybody's aware that we replaced all the street lights with LEDs. And the goal of the program is to really invest in our buildings and our HVAC systems to make them more energy efficient. And the goal of the program is that within 5 years that we will have cut our energy usage by 20%. And I think a year and a half into the program, I think we've already cut it, I believe she said 7 or 8%.
Yeah, or 6.9, I believe.
6.9, it's
So
close
7.
to 7.
Yeah, not to split hairs.
But yeah, I mean, so when we're, when we need to do work on a boiler or an HVAC unit, we want to, we utilize this Green Communities funds, and it allows us to buy energy efficient units, and then going forward, we actually save a lot of taxpayer dollars on the utility end of things, electricity or natural gas, whatever the case may be. So it's a great program at the state, and considering it's the first year and a half, I think it's been very successful. I think in the first year, we spent about $100,000 worth of town funding, and we got about $1 million worth of energy efficient improvements to our buildings. So it really works out over time. And again, after that, we'll receive lower energy bills moving forward. So
yeah, savings all around. All right, very good. Well, thank you once again for coming in and taking some time and talking with us.
It's my pleasure, Rich. Anytime. Thank you.
All right, we'll see you next month.